We have a shocking Nick Robertson trade update as a very wild report has come out this morning revealing some very interesting details on the future of Nick Robertson. And it seems like a signing may be imminent for the Toronto Maple Leafs and the forward that was just a few days ago figured to be all but gone. So I'm going to break down that report and discuss what it can mean going forward. But before I do, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, about 70% of you aren't subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It is free, and we're on the road now to 13,000 subscribers. So thank you guys for allowing us to hit 12,000. It means the world. But there is some very interesting news to discuss today on this Monday, which is usually the day where news drops, but we got some crazy news from Darren Dreger. He's been quiet on the Nick Robertson and Mitch Marner front, but he came out on the radio and had some very interesting things to say. He talked about a Mitch Marner extension, but we're focusing today on Nick Robertson's trade request, and let's just dive right into it. You can see this here. So Berube talked to Robertson and assured him he will have a legit opportunity. They like the skill set. There wasn't a ton of interest in Nick Robertson around the league, and Robertson has decided to make the best of the situation, and that's the biggest telling point here of the entire thing. Let's just dive in a couple of the quotes because there's a lot to go over. So you can see this here. This is the big news for the day. I believe that they're going to get something done and that Nick Robertson will return to the Maple Leafs. It sounds like he's recognizing, or he's leaning more towards recognizing, what he has in Toronto and making the best of his situation. So Darius finally, after what's been months now of speculation, Darren Dreger comes out and drops the bomb that he is going to remain in Toronto in all likelihood, and that he's not going to, or the Leafs at the very least aren't going to honor his trade request.
Yeah, after this news dropped this morning, it looks to me at least that logic is finally going to prevail because from the beginning, I've been saying that, if you're Nick Robertson, it's kind of a no-brainer to re-sign and come back to the Leafs. I understand his frustration, right? Like when they came out and his camp came out earlier this summer and said, we want to move, we want to play in the top six. I understand that frustration, but coming into this season, we kind of knew the last couple of years that at some point it was eventually going to open up for Nick Robertson to have an opportunity to play in the top six, or at least try, come to training camp and earn a spot in the top six eventually as some contracts, some guys left, obviously Bertuzzi left. So he has the opportunity now. So I thought it was really weird from the start that he wanted to move when finally the opportunity is there. So it seems like logic is finally coming to the top here. And, he's making the decision. It sounds like over this weekend, because as, early as last week, we were still talking about, he didn't want to be a Maple Leaf. He still wanted to move on and get a better opportunity somewhere else. So it looks like this weekend, I guess he thought about it and he wants to be a Leaf and re-sign, right? And I'm sure a conversation like mentioned there with Berube, we'll get into some more stuff about that too, probably helped that along as well because, having some confidence in your coach, knowing that, he likes your skill set and he's going to give you every opportunity to succeed certainly helps that. So this is good news, I think, for the Leafs because it sounded like there was not much interest around the league. There's a lot of speculation for sure, but in terms of getting equal value for Nick Robertson, I'd rather just have him on the team. Honestly, I think there's a really high ceiling still there, and working with Berube could be a good thing for him.
Yeah, and whether it was a matter of maybe Nick Robertson changing his mind or being forced to change his mind because we had a feeling that he wasn't going to sit the whole year. It's not in his best interest or the Maple Leafs' best interest, but the interesting part here from Darren Dreger, you can see it in the second jot note there, is that there wasn't a ton of interest in Nick Robertson around the league, and that could definitely, it seems like the Leafs were definitely shopping him. They had to. He requested a trade, but we've been mentioning it on here a bunch about the fact that now they have a new coach, and you were really hard on the fact that Nick Robertson should give Craig Berube a shot and see what he can do because obviously Sheldon Keefe didn't give Nick Robertson the ample opportunity at all. We know that the Leafs, way back at the start of last year, started him with the Marlies, which had led to some bad blood ultimately. But it seems like there wasn't a lot of trade interest around the league, which maybe forced his hand into saying, okay, well, I guess I'll make the best out of Craig Berube here, because when that report came out a week ago or a few days ago about another report about Nick Robertson, it made like no sense that the only teams he could get traded to that would fit his needs were the worst teams in the NHL. You'd be better off staying with the Leafs and playing yourself into a better contract. So logic prevailed, I think, in this situation from both sides, even though Nick Robertson made it a lot harder than it should be.
Yeah, and I think, like you mentioned, right, like logic prevailing here. For Nick Robertson and the Leafs, for him to sit out, nobody's winning in that situation, right? That is not in the best interest of, Nick Robertson and the Leafs this season because the Leafs are losing out on a player who could be playing in their top six. Like I've said before, I think Nick Robertson has an opportunity here to beat out both Matthew Nyes and Bobby McMann for a top six spot here on the left wing, right? I think McMann is maybe better suited on the third line anyway, depending how they, work out their lines. But still, lots of time to get into that. Training camp hasn't even started. But I'm happy with this. Obviously, it's not done yet. He hasn't signed the contract, but it looks like he's open to the fact of returning to the team and giving it a shot. And I think that's a good thing because working with Berube, I think Berube is going to give him lots of opportunity here, right? This is what I need out of you, right? And if I don't see it, then maybe we talk about a trade further down the road, right? But, Robertson finally stayed healthy last year. I just don't think he was given the opportunity to succeed. So with that opportunity, I feel like, he's going to be motivated to come in and have a big season. And even if they look at trading him down the road, if you're playing with Austin Matthews, let's say, for example, or even on that second line with Mitch Marner or William Nylander on your other wing, like there's a lot of opportunity for Robertson to score a lot of goals this year. So I think it's a good thing for the Leafs. Like Leaf fans should be excited that this is the resolution. Just a couple of days ago, I was a little bit turned off to the fact that, he said he didn't want to be a Maple Leaf, right? There's a lot of negotiations going on through the media. So maybe that didn't actually come from his mouth. I'm sure, if he comes into camp, he's going to be motivated to, have a good season, right? And want to succeed with the Leafs. So I think that's all that matters at the end of the day. If he's, playing well and for the Maple Leafs, that's great. That's great in my mind.
Yeah, it's been an absolute whirlwind because literally, like you mentioned a week ago, it seemed like he didn't want anything to do with Toronto, and something changed his mind. And you can see this here from Nick Barton. I know that Berube assured Nick Robertson that he'd be given a chance, and that's kind of the biggest thing here is that it's not the same coaching staff as last season. If you're thinking from Nick Robertson's perspective, giving the Leafs a chance to, I mean, you look at Austin Matthews, look at the team that the Leafs have. They could elevate Nick Robertson's play to get him more money in the future anyway. Here's another quote from Darren Dreger. He said, I believe that they're going to get something done. Like we said, that Nick Robertson's likely going to return to the Maple Leafs. This was a process, and that's a word we always use around free agents at certain times of the year related to contracts. Robertson had his own personal reasons, whether it was under the guidance of Sheldon Keefe, or maybe he just felt like he wasn't the right fit, that he was being miscast, or he wasn't given the opportunity in Toronto. And now he's going to have to put the opportunity to Toronto, I'm not going to say excuse, but reason to bed, because he's going to be given an opportunity, assuming that he re-signs. And again, Darren Dreger doubles down. They're going to get something done. I think this has been managed properly, which is very interesting. It's been a slow play. I'm sure that Treliving, because he's involved in every trade-related conversation, has explored what sort of interest there is in Nick Robertson across the league. And frankly, I don't think there is a ton of interest. And that's why he probably went up to Nick Robertson and said, a trade's not going to happen. We're not getting adequate value. My guess is it's like a third-round pick or something like that teams were offering just because of just he's a weird player to pick up given the lack of track record in the NHL and the lack of playing time he was given. But Darius, I think you're going to get your guy here playing with the Toronto Maple Leafs on opening night against the Montreal Canadiens. After all this debacle, or whatever you want to call it, he is going to stay. And it seems like Craig Berube is really excited to have Nick Robertson. Is going to give him every chance in the world to be that 30-goal scorer that we think and hope he can be.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Like if this does end up happening, which it's looking very likely at this point, I'm very excited, right? I've been saying the whole time that the best case scenario is for him to stay with the Maple Leafs. The opportunity for him to succeed is finally there. We knew it was going to take a couple years and he would only be, 25 or, 24. He's still younger than that around the time he'd be given this opportunity. So I knew this was, the right timeline, I guess. And maybe he felt like he wasn't being given the opportunity, which was fair. And that's why he was upset. All makes sense. But I'm excited to see what he does with Craig Berube. I mean, I think he's the second best shooter on the team besides Austin Matthews, right? So if you give him a better opportunity on special teams as well, I really like, where this player can go. And Berube is going to work with him, right? He's going to teach him a couple things and how to be useful and how to, change his game. I feel like he wasn't being given that, guidance before. And anytime he messed up anything, he was stapled to the bench. It's just, you can't perform that way. So I'm excited to see what he does. I'm interested to see what the contract looks like. There's a lot still to be done here, but I'm glad that, it's looking like he's going to return to the Leafs and he'll be in the opening night roster because at the end of the day, makes sense for both parties. And, it was handled properly too. I think Brad Treliving from the start said, we want this player to return. We believe in this player. And there wasn't too much noise from, either end, either party, I should say, about, throwing shots at each other through the media or anything. So I feel like it was handled properly and they're coming to a resolution finally.
Yeah, and despite him being in Keith's dog cage, he still had a very good season given what happened, putting up over 10 goals and over 20 points. But let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on that. We'll have you up to date if and when he does sign. But let us know your thoughts are on this news, and we'll see you soon.